Hey, good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Marla Billinghurst. I will be chairing the meeting this morning. With me on the panel this morning are Mr. Robert Phillick and Mr. Richard Whitbread. The assessor this morning is Mr. Jonathan Spacek. Is that correct? Sorry. And the secretary this morning is Mr. Stephen Lunn. Are there any Zoom participants?
No, it's just yourself Zooming in today.
Okay, so I can skip that. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of property are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 and 5 on our docket today. Mr. Lunn, please affirm the assessor's and the applicant's testimony.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
That is Jonathan Spacek.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please stand. Please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Okay, everybody's sworn in. So, Mr. Assessor, please, are you ready to proceed with your evidence on item number 1?
Yes, and is that is item number 1? I don't have it open here. Is that 280 William?
Yes, it is.
All right. Yes, ready to go. I actually just one thing. I just sent an email to Stefan. Is it Stefan?
Stephen, yes.
Stephen. Okay, Stephen. Thank you. I just sent an email to Stephen. I was just hoping I just have a updated workup. I was hoping to be passed around. Is that possible?
Yes, if
Just a
the
PDF.
panel, if the panel is okay with that, I can do that. I will need to take a quick 2 minutes to print a physical copy for the applicant as well.
That'd be great. I'd appreciate that.
Is the panel okay with that?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Sorry, this is a updated
It's just an updated income workup for the property. I talked to Mr. Smith about this property yesterday, and it was brought to my attention that the some square footages have been updated with architectural drawings. So I just all it is the same all the same parameters, but just some updated square footage for the property, which changes the value a bit. So really, I'm making a recommendation.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, that's fine by me.
Okay.
To come forward, yeah.
Okay, so can I take a 2-minute recess? We take a 2-minute recess so I can distribute the documents?
Yes.
I'm not sure which camera I'm speaking to here. That one? That's the chair. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Spatchik, please proceed when ready.
Thank you, everyone. If we all turn to page 1 of my brief, we have an overview of the property. We are looking at roll number 13060962000. This is 280 William Avenue. And this is located at the corner of William Avenue and King Street in the Exchange District. We have a 2023 assessment appeal, and our assessed value adjusted is, if you need to reference it, in my updated worksheet I sent out, is $2,100,000, and that is what I'm recommending today. The property description: this is a 2-story downtown office building. It was actually built in 1924, and after renovations, we have an effective year of around 1972. This building has a gross area of 14,400 square feet, and our updated leasable square footage on this building is 13,461. If everyone turns to page 2, you'll see some photos of this property. You have an aerial view. You can see exactly where it's located on the corner of William and King Street. And under that is a street view of the property from William Street. And on page 3 is a street view from King Street. If we turn to page 4 of my brief, you'll notice we've received a response for the request letter sent in 2020. So they've complied with our request for information. And we also have a subject sale. The current owner of this property bought the building September 5th, 2017. This is approximately 3 years prior to our reference date of April 1st, 2021, and it was sold for $1,700,000. And you'll notice I've put in with an asterisk there. They've after that they've completed interior alterations. And I looked up the permits with the declared value of $780,000, and what they did was interior alterations to change it from the older office condition into it's currently used as a school, and that's where we get the it's actually the liability. This property is it's school exempt as opposed to our usual taxable classification. So the liability is school tax exempt. It is currently being operated and run as a school. And you'll see, if you turn to my workup, how this property is valued. So this is my updated worksheet I've sent in PDF. You'll see we have 2 floors that total 8,974 square feet. And we have a market rent from our model determined at $15.01. And then we have a basement space of 4,487, which in our model, we have it as substandard basement. So we don't have it properly coded, but since the renovations, we were still keeping this value of $3.94 a square foot for that basement space. This gives you a total blended rate of $11.32 over 13,461 square foot. We have 11% vacancy on this property. For our 2023 cycle, we are doing 3% non-recoverable expenses, and we've increased the shortfall to $8 for that vacant space. After all the expenses are taken off that total gross potential income, we've come to it, and we cap it at 5.7%. That's where we get the value of $2,100,000 that I am recommending today. And if we go back to my brief, the main floor space and second floor space, we have a blended rate of about $15 a square foot. I've included 5 downtown comparables. My first 3 are standard, kind of similar type building, 2-story office space. They're their actual year builds are between 1985, 1986, and 1987. Which I would consider very similar after the renovations done on our subject property. We have lease start dates on the first one at 183 Kennedy at 6,200 square feet. It is a lease from 2020, right before our reference date. And it's a 5-year lease at $14.52 a square foot. My second comparable is 255 Sherbrooke Street. Again, this is in West Broadway, but it's a very similar 2-story office building, lease signed in 2020 for 5 years at 12,475 square feet. Again, very similar in size, $13.50 a square foot. We have 942 St. Mary's Road. This is 1987 2-story office, lease signed in 2019, a 7-year lease for 8,500 square feet, and this is at $15.70 a square foot. And then I've also included 2 larger downtown office buildings that we consider these OFCs, as they're over the 2 stories that our suburban offices are, or that classification at least. So comparable number 4 is an 8-story office building, 136 Market Avenue. And I've taken a lease from there that was signed in 2019. It's a 2-year lease for 5,451 square feet at $13.50 a square foot. And then just down the street from Market, under my address, you'll see I've accidentally pasted the roll number, but this is 65 Rory. This is on the corner of Rory and Bannatyne. It's originally a 3-story that is now a 5-story office building. You can see it was originally built in 1928 with an effective year of 1988, but this is a 3-year lease for 7,400 square feet, and that was signed at $16 a square foot. And this averages out to, for all my comparables, about $14.64 a square foot, which is again close enough to give me confidence in that $15 a square foot for the first and second floor for a renovated office building on the corner of William and King as our subject property. So again, those are my comparables for the market rent. Page 7 is just income value summary, which is the same as, which is different because it's the original one. But if you need to reference the value, just look at my handed out spreadsheet. On page 8, you'll see we do have a standard capitalization rate chart that covers a wide range of properties for our 2023 income producing properties. But if you want to look at what, to get an idea of where ours sits on the ranges of the city capitalization rates and some of the other brokerages in the city, our subject property, our model gives it a 5.7% cap rate. And you will see on our chart, we have the first group of properties at the top of this sheet is office. There's 4 of them. You'll see they range from OFA, OFB, OFS, and then suburban A and B OFSs. So what we'll say, there's not a specific one for suburban downtown offices. If you look at for our downtown OFSs, but if you see the range of, the closest we'll have is suburban B OFSs. The city of Winnipeg, we have 2 rows on here, the 20th percentile to the 80th percentile. This is just showing, taking out the low 20% caps and the high 20% caps, what the majority of our capitalization rates range of them is for the 2023 cycle, and it ranges from 5.6 to 6.9. So our subject property is at 5.7%, and that's on the lower range of our capitalization rates for OFSs. But again, this is a newly renovated one that was just renovated before the reference date, and that's going to, based on the size of this property and where it's located, that's where we get that 5.7%. And I've also included the 2020 INE. That's on my page 12. So this is the income and expense mailer that was sent in by the owner for information to help us build our model as of the reference date. So this is for the 2020 year, and you'll see it's a fully owner occupied building. So there's no rental information on there, but you can see what their expenses are. And they've also filled out on page 11, this is new for our 2023 cycle, but we did send out a COVID questionnaire with every one of our income and expense measures to try to get an idea of how COVID affected some of these properties and if there was a large effect. So you can look through this COVID-19 supplemental questionnaire, and the big thing you'll see, so the first question is, please indicate the extent to which COVID pandemic and related public health measures have impacted the operation of this property, and it says a significant impact. And then in question 2, were tenants at this location closed temporarily due to public health measures? The owners stated no. Have any of the existing tenants closed permanently due to COVID? No. And then it says question 4, in 2020, has the property experienced an increase in operating expenses due to COVID-19? Checked yes. If yes, briefly describe the expenses incurred and the approximate amount. So in this property, the owner had to do additional cleaning and supplies and social distancing alterations, which increased their expenses as compared to normal. And then the next question in section 4 is, were the increased expenses successfully passed on to the tenants? No. So this tenant had increased non-recoverable expenses due to COVID. And you can see question 5, did the property incur non-recoverable capital expenses related to health and safety precautions taken in response to COVID-19? And you can see no. And question 6, have existing tenants requested rent deferral or rent abatements resulting from COVID? No, but again, it's owner occupied. Question 7 is, between January 1st, 2020 and April 1st, 2021, were new leases negotiated after the effects of COVID became apparent? No. Question 8, have any of the existing leases been amended as a result of COVID? No. And question 9, have any tenants abandoned or breached the terms of their leases as a direct result of COVID-19? No. And then question 10, has this property received any government funded assistance, grants, or financial support associated with COVID-19? And then if yes, describe briefly. So yes, and they received CECRA. So I just went over that because you'll see this included in all the hearings for the rest of the cycle, and but I won't go over every question every time unless it's relevant. But again, I believe that's all the relevant information for this property. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Smith, do you have any questions for the assessor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a few. Just looking at your page number 6 there, Jonathan, and the comparables that are present there. The subject property would be located in the East Exchange. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the comparables that are in the Exchange District that are on your sheet there, none of them are located in the East Exchange, right? They would all be either in the West. Sorry, rather, they would be in the East Exchange rather than the West Exchange, the subject being in the West Exchange.
Yes, that is very true.
Okay. And or in other areas of downtown, or I guess one's in St. Patel?
Yes.
Okay. And then just looking at the comparables there, each of these properties would be relatively standard, traditional tenanted office space. Is that correct?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, so none of them would be classroom type space to your knowledge.
None of them have been converted to be space where there's desks and like classroom setting. No, they're all just standard office from my understanding.
Okay, and just quickly for reference, so your comparable number 4, 136 Market, that would be the property owned by Shelter Canadian immediately east of the Manitoba Theatre Centre. Is that correct?
That is true.
And then 65 Rory, which is the last one there. It doesn't actually show the address, but comp number 5, that would be kitty corner to the Ashdown warehouse.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and that's been an office building for quite a number of decades, I believe.
Yeah, it's had more of a restaurant club on the main floor and then office space in the remainder of the building.
Great, thank you. The capitalization rate, 5.7%. You've referred to that a little bit. And you had noted that I guess there's no OFS category for downtown. OFS stands for what again?
It's just our suburban office. classification, or it's usually our OFS is our suburban office classification, and then it's just really any offices that are 2 stories and lower. So anything above 3 stories, we go to the OFC, OFB, OFA, depending on the quality and what it is. But then our standard OFS is just suburban office. But again, these are, downtown offices with that OFS tag. It just means it's 2 stories and under with office space.
I see. So when we look at your page number 8 and the city of Winnipeg's office capitalization rate chart there, when I look at the downtown cap rates versus the suburban cap rates in the 20th percentile column, downtown ranges at the low end, 20th percentile, from 6 for downtown A, which would be your 3 or 4 buildings at the corner of Portage and Main, to 6.75 on the low end for downtown B, versus the OFSs in suburban A and B at a low end of 5.6. So would it be, what I'm seeing is that cap rates downtown are shown to be significantly different than those in the suburbs.
Yeah, it's important to note that, like, for our OFA, like you said, there's only four or five of them, the largest, the largest square footage buildings downtown, and then our OFBs, which they're, a lot of OFBs downtown, but they're larger style buildings, more square footage. Our OFSs have such a wide range of sizes and locations that's why there's a larger range in caps, if that makes sense. Like, the OFAs and OFBs are pretty similar across the board, and then our OFSs range from these smaller 2 stories to larger 2 stories that can have anywhere from 2,000 square feet up to 60,000 square feet, depending where it is, right? So that there is a range between them, and I agree with that.
So, and the subject property itself, it wouldn't fall into either a downtown A or B. It would be below that categorization. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it would just be, yeah, exactly. It's not an OFA, it's not an OFB, it's not an OFC. It's just a 2-story office downtown, and there are some of them, as you've seen from my comparables, but not a huge amount. There's much more OFCs, OFBs, OFAs downtown.
Okay, and then just looking at capitalization rates in general, I saw that the city had used 7.2% in the last cycle and 5.7% in this cycle, which is a change of 1.5%. Did we see that dramatic a shift in cap rates over the 2 cycles?
It's so when a building goes through renovations, in this case, our parameters get updated, the effective year gets changed. It gets instead of drawing a capitalization rate from a 1924 building, which would have a higher cap rate, it starts deriving a modeled cap rate from a newer updated building. So that's where you're going to get the biggest change in the cap rate. That's not just a market change. That's it's a change of the condition of the building. And if you're buying a building that they've put in 700,000 in renovations, you would expect the cap rate to drop.
And I would agree with you there. In the last cycle, when the property was appealed, which it was, the cap rate at 7.2%, the property had already been renovated at that point in time, and that was taken into account in that valuation, though.
Yeah, well, so from my understanding, when I had downtown OFSs last cycle, the 5.7 to, was much more common for a smaller renovated one. So that 7.2, it may have been I didn't look into the last cycle's valuation, but it could have been it could have been higher for a reason, but the most common reason for it to drop like that would be for a renovation. I haven't seen any market ones drop from 7 to 5.7.
Okay, those are all
just market drops.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Phillick, any questions?
No, one of my questions was the cap rate, and I understand that we've got all that information that I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
None, thank you.
And I have no questions. So Mr. Smith, please proceed with your presentation when ready.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So just to clarify, and we'll get to this in my report, but the subject property was appealed for the last cycle. It was purchased in November of 2017 by the current property owner and was subsequently renovated. And that renovation took place in, an efficient time frame. So it had been renovated and open and operating for some time prior to the last assessment cycle. So it was assessed in a renovated condition, and the capitalization rate that was applied in the last cycle of 7.2% did take into account that renovated condition. Let's move forward with my report here. Cover page of the property just gives you an external view of the property. We're actually quite close to it where we are. It's located on the southwest corner of William and what is our street behind us here, adjacent to City Hall. That's eluding me at the moment. In any case, it's just over here for everybody in the room. Bit of background on the subject property on my page number 3. We can run through this relatively quickly. It was originally built in 1924. Renovations were undertaken on the property subsequent to the purchase in 2017 to convert it to the use of the property owner. Property owner is also the owner of the business that's operating out of there, which is an international language school. So they host foreign students to come in and learn English and other languages as well in classroom type setting. And so they took the existing building and renovated it to their needs, which is not a standard office use, certainly when you look at some of the photos. So that is a bit of background on the property. Zoning for the property is C for character. So there are some limitations on what can be done on the property with that zoning. The site area of the property, basically the floor plate of the building takes up the site. We have site area of 4,754, slightly under that, obviously, for the building size, but obviously there is no on-site parking available for the subject property. We have main floors and second floor and basement space as we see it here, all of the same size, giving us a total area of 13,461 square feet. Now, that was submitted to the city as Mr. Spacek indicated, and they have adjusted their square footage, which is great. What I will point out is that the square footage that is submitted here in these drawings doesn't take into account any deductions for BOMA standards. So we haven't deducted any stairwells or column spacing, anything of that nature. So the square footage that is stated is probably somewhat overstating the actual area that would be leasable in a typical situation, but we don't have that information available, so we're simply going with the actual architect's floor plans and giving the total area of it. Let's look at the build out of the building itself, beginning on page 4. Actually, I'll bump you back just quickly to page number 3. So in 2020, as indicated on the page here, we did appeal the property on behalf of the ownership, and it was reduced at that time from 1,571,000. We're looking at a 43% increase to that value to 2,247,000. Now, I'm not comparing assessments by doing this. I'm giving a history of the property. Comparing assessments is looking at other properties' assessments in relation to your own property. So this is simply providing the background. The subject property, again, photos start on page number 4 to the exterior, then we get into the interior. So top of page 5 is what a typical room looks like for the property. Relatively large rooms built out as classroom space, so not individual offices or anything of that nature. And then we have some wide open space as shown on page number 5. The circulation area on page 6, and access to the basement shown with the stairwell on the bottom of page number 6 there, and the limestone or stone rubble foundation wall at the bottom. The basement space is shown on page 7, so you can see that they have obviously put in flooring and some lighting, but left the deck open. So is it renovated? Yes, somewhat, but and they do make use of it when needed, but it's not built out as the top 2 floors are. The description of this is on page number 8 if you wish to go through it. I won't go through it in any greater detail. And then we have the site description shown on page number 9. So property is at the corner of King Street and William Avenue on the southwest corner, as I indicated. Property location is shown on page number 10. Again, obviously on the west side of Main Street in the West Exchange, adjacent to City Hall here. Page number 11, I'll refer to the sale history as it is relevant. So subject property traded September 5th, 2017 for consideration of 1.7 million. It was marketed for sale on the open market by a brokerage and was originally listed for sale for 1.4 million. Now, the purchaser and current owner of the property was a motivated purchaser in their acquisition of the property. Their clientele, by and large, live in the downtown area, and it's important for them, for their space to be in the downtown area and somewhat close to the Red River College as well. So in their acquisition of the property, there were no other properties on the market at the time that they needed it that would be suitable for them. And so they were essentially willing to pay above market in order to acquire it for their specific needs. So that informs the purchase price of 1.7 million. And as I said, they were a very motivated purchaser in that acquisition. So the purchase price of 1.7 million, I would suggest to you that it's probably not market value at that particular point in time. And you can see that from the lift over the market price of 1.4 million. Typically, we're not seeing commercial properties at that point in time go for well above list price. Let's move on to the valuation itself. And we have a non-standard renovated heritage building on the smaller side that is built out as office space. So what can we compare this to? Well, it's a challenge, certainly, and we do need to look at what rates are for office space. So what I've done, as the city has, is look at leases of comparable space in the downtown area. So we have a range of properties here. I've given you 12. Many of them are either in the Exchange, they're all in the downtown area, and they're all informative in their own way. So let's start at the top. We won't go through all of them. 167 Lombard, built in 1906, obviously changed since that time. This is the grain exchange building, if we're all familiar with that one, adjacent to the Richardson building. 2021 lease for 10 years at $9 a square foot for 7,258 square feet. Now, if you look at our above ground footprint here, we're looking at 8,974 square feet. So similar size. Certainly that's would be a more traditional office building and office location than the subject property. 379 Broadway, Broadway at Edmonton, 2021 lease for 5 years at $11 a square foot for 3,000 square feet. Again, traditional office building, much newer at 1961. We have property 428 Portage. This is an older one, built in 2018 lease for $10.38 a square foot over 5 years. This is the Power Building, which is located on Portage Avenue, adjacent to the Hudson Bay Company building, owned by a large local investment company. 365 Main, 1 Lombard. Obviously, this is the Richardson building, considerably larger space, just over 22,000 square feet, 2016 lease for $11 a square foot. Now, why am I putting that one in there? Is it directly comparable? No, but if you can lease space in the Richardson building for $11 a square foot, I think that provides you some framing with regard to the subject as well. Beyond that, some of our leases get a bit older, so I won't go through all of them in detail here. We have 115 Bannatyne is another older renovated warehouse building, which has been an office building for a considerable period of time. Built in 1925, 2018 lease for $7 a square foot for just over 12,000 square feet on a 10-year term. That's a beautifully renovated building, again, in the East Exchange, which would typically draw higher rents than properties on the west side of Main Street, all things being equal. I can run through it in greater detail, but essentially we're seeing a top end for what I would say would be comparable properties at $11 per square foot. Beyond that, we've provided you market stats. There's no direct compare stats for properties such as the subject. So what I've done is include what is available. We have Class C office space being shown by Cushman and Wakefield for the relevant time frame with an average net rental rate of $11.68. These would be more typical office spaces than the subject as well. Following that, we have Capital Commercial also for the same time frame, indicating $12.91 as an average for Class C. Now, again, the subject would fall typically outside of that range. Looking at the build out for the property, is it new? Yes, it is. Is it useful for the majority of office tenants? I would say probably not as useful as more traditional build outs. And the location is what it is. There is no on-site parking, etc. So we've assigned a rate after examining all of this information of $10.75 a square foot for the subject property. And there is no on-site parking, so there's no revenue from that source. Let's move on to the expense side. Vacancy and collection loss. You can see the statistics here from Cushman, Collier's Capital, and the Johnson report. So Class C space, we're looking at a range between 13.3% and 19.5%, with downtown space overall ranging between 11.3% at the low end and 13.9% at the high end. So those are very high vacancy rates. Obviously, the downtown certainly was struggling with regard to office leasing at this point in time. We've had both the COVID situation as well as the general disruption in the downtown office market. We had the construction of some new higher end space, which was creating vacancy in both higher Class A space as well as a trickle down effect into the lower categories as well. Add on to that the situation with COVID of people not being allowed to be in their office space or choosing not to occupy their office space. Businesses going out of business, etc. Vacancy was a significant issue downtown. We recognize that, and we see that the rates are typically in the 13 to 19% time frame. We're not asking for a vacancy rate approaching that. We recognize that vacancy exists, but we're utilizing a vacancy rate of 6% in our valuation, and recognizing the additional vacancy risk as kind of one of the components in the selection of the cap rate for the subject property. So we've used 6%. Let's move on to the expense allowance. I'm not going to go through this in detail. Each of the panel members here have heard in great detail my description of the issue with the expense allowance as far as the city of Winnipeg changing their parameters from all earlier cycles beginning in 2020 and carrying forward into the current cycle. They've essentially dropped the cap rate from 7%, or rather the expense allowance overall from 7% down to 2% in the last cycle and 3% in this cycle. As shown on my page 15 and 16, this doesn't recognize standard appraisal methodology or assessment methodology in including all non-recoverable expenses that a landlord would typically bear in the marketplace in account in deducting these from the effective gross income to arrive at a fair net operating income. So again, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but all of the information is there for you to review. In my prior company, we did an extensive study on properties over a three-year period, including properties in each year between 45 and 53 properties per year. So an extensive study showing that indeed the actual non-recoverables were above the overall 7% that we are asking to be reinstituted. So again, the city of Winnipeg formerly had an expense allowance of 7%. It's now been reduced to 3% for this cycle. And we've given you the background on why this is not accurate and what the components of that non-recoverable expense are and what a typical level of that non-recoverable expense would be falling above the 7%. So in the valuation, we're simply asking for a reinstitution of the 7% parameter that the city of Winnipeg formerly had in all prior cycles prior to 2020. I will leave that at that. The shortfall allowance closely matches the proper amount for the subject property, so we've deferred to $8 a square foot. And we can move on to capitalization rate. Now, looking at the subject property, I will point out at this time that I have made an adjustment to my valuation. The cap rate that was meant to be applied to the subject property was not 7.5%, but rather 7%. So if you could all make that adjustment on your page, putting in the 7%, the final valuation that this produces is $1,715,000.
Was that again?
$1,715,000. So we'll bump back just very quickly to cap rate. As you can see, I've given you a chart of two of the major commercial brokerages operating in our market, Cushman & Wakefield and Colliers. We have nothing in this chart that specifically identifies a category for the subject property. It would be Class C at the top end. Obviously there's nothing of that nature here. If you look at Class B classification, we're looking at Cushman & Wakefield indicating a range of 6.5% to 7%, and Colliers indicating 6 to 6.75%. This closely matches what they were projecting in the last cycle as well for those categories. Essentially, we're not looking at any real change for the subject property in terms of cap rate. To add to this, I provided our own study of cap rates, which you can see at the bottom of page number 18. These will, of course, range in terms of comparability to the subject property, age of construction, date of sale, etc. But all of these are tenanted office buildings that are purchased for the net operating income in place. So we have sales between 2017 and 2019, and we're looking at cap rate range on the low end of 6.75% up to a high of 8.7% for the various trades that transacted here. Some of them are, well, the majority are downtown actually. A couple of them are suburban, further out on Portage, or one on Waverly. But again, our range, for the most part, you can see that they're falling in that high sixes, low sevens, up to 8% for the properties that we're seeing here. Subject property is a single occupant, converted heritage building, originally built in 1924 with the same structure in place. Looking at all the factors for this, we've applied a cap rate of 7% again. And applying this to our NOI gives us $1,715,000 as our final market value. If you look at my page 19, I think the chart at the top is informative. It gives you the city of Winnipeg's 2023 valuation prior to the adjustment for the leasable area in comparison to our valuation of the subject property, but also in comparison to the 2020 valuation. So if you look at the 2020 column, again, looking at a cap rate of 7.2% used by the city and 5.7% used in the current cycle. We're really not seeing any changes of that dramatic nature. And again, that 7.2% did take into account the fact that the property was renovated at that time frame. The addendum materials include the income expense report, cap rate reports, and I think I did not include the board order, but it simply indicates that the decision was taken based on the applicant's evidence in the last cycle. So that is my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Spacek, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Phillick?
No, I don't. It was quite detailed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
No questions. Thanks.
Nor do I. So we can thank you very much, Mr. Smith. We can move on to the next matter. The next matter on the docket is number 5, 103 Scurfield Boulevard.
Thank you. Would you like me to begin?
Yes, please.
All right. So when I was reviewing this property, there is one preliminary issue I have to bring up. We do have a non-compliance request as per my first page. There was no mailer sent in for the 2020 income year. And if you'd like me to go over that first, I could do that.
So can you just, sorry, give me 1 minute just to pull it up, please?
No problem.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. So you'll just see, again, so for 2023, if you scroll down to my page 9 of my brief, I'll let everyone get there. When we do not receive a mailer, we do ask for non-compliance. We did not get the information for the year that helps us build our model. And so what I've included here to show the non-compliance is I've included the certified mailer we send out. So after we send out our first income and expense mailer, we send out another one if we do not get it returned. And you'll see at the top left of this one, we have a tracking number under the Winnipeg symbol. It's LP 578-617-205-CA. And this was sent for 103 Scurfield Limited to 111 George Avenue. You'll see page 9. Page 10 and 11 is that certified mailer that was sent out, and you'll see page 12. And if you've had any of these before with hearings for non-compliance, you'll notice we usually have Canada Post usually sends out a picture of the envelope and a picture of the signature, but due to COVID, they've changed how they operate with regards to dropping off and with getting signatures for certified packages. So they just drop it off, and you'll see that this page 12, just under the Dear Sir or Madame, please find below the scan delivery date and signature of the recipient of the item below. If they did not get a signature, they did not need to go for it. So they didn't push for the signature, or due to COVID, whatever their regulations were, they did not. But they did show that it was delivered at that address, and you can see the item number LP 5786-17205-CA matches the tracking of the certified letter that the certified mailer that we sent. And if you turn to page 13, this is showing their tracking, the information for their tracking. So on June 9th, it was processed. On June 10th, it was sent out. And then by the end of the day, it was out for delivery at 10:41. And at 12:53, it was progress delivered. And you can see at the top, that is the same tracking number as was on the 2 previous pages. And on page 14, what I've included just to show that we did send it to the proper, we did send it to the owner of the property. You can see on page 14, if you go towards the bottom under the director information, you can see the second name is Andrew Lawson, and that's at 111 George Avenue. And that's who we had sent the mailers for. And I did confirm with the tax, our tax side, that's where we sent all of our tax information and tax bills, and they were always paid. So again, in my mind, when I see this, I see it certified that it was sent to the owner, and then that we just did not receive it back. So in that case, I ask for non-compliance, and again, asking for the reversal onus, and asking for that if there is a reduction, that it does not fall until the next assessment year. So that's my presentation on non-compliance.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions about the request for non-compliance?
I have no questions, and I have no further information to add to that.
All right, Mr. Phillick,
No questions.
Mr. Whitbread?
No questions.
I have no questions as well. Okay, and so Mr. Smith, you said you have no evidence.
I have no further information, I'm afraid.
Okay, so we'll take a short recess to discuss. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back. As you know, we took a recess to discuss the assessor's request for non-compliance, and we are granting that request. So this will be a matter of reverse onus. So Mr. Smith, you will be proceeding first in this case.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So the property we're dealing with is 103 Scurfield Boulevard. You can see on my cover page an external photo of the frontage of the property there. So you can see the property that we're looking at. Let's jump forward to my page number 3. And you can see some of the property details. So 2023 assessment is $1,097,000 by the city of Winnipeg. And for the 2022 assessment, so 2020 through 2022, the property was under appeal here at the Board of Revision, originally assessed at $1,032,000. And on appeal, it was reduced to $860,000. Property is zoned M1 light manufacturing, and occupancy obviously is office. Original age built in 1990. And we have a leasable area of 3,963 square feet. We can move into the photographs of the property. Some of the externals shown on page number 4 and 5, showing you both the frontage and the rear of the property, as well as the parking area for the subject. Moving into page number 6, you can see photographs of one of the office spaces inside, as well as one of the internal circulation hallways that runs through the building. So I don't actually have a layout for the building, but if you look at my page number 8 and the frontage of the building, you can barely see, I guess, where the front door would be, which is kind of 3/4 of the way along the front towards the right-hand side. There is a common hallway that stretches back from that doorway and then makes an L shape and exits on what would be the west side of the building, I guess. And there are units on the front and the rear of that L shape. And then on the eastern side of the building, there are also 2 tenants on that section. So it is somewhat demised into smaller units, as you'll see from the tenancy list. So subject would be considered a Class C suburban commercial office building. We're looking at a 1-story building, relatively small in size, as noted. There has been property was purchased. It's owned by an owner occupant, and they did some renovation to their own unit, but the remainder of the building has not been renovated at this time. They have a basic level of finish in the majority of the units, and some of them somewhat lower than the others. Let's move on to the valuation itself, beginning on page number 12. So what I've done at the top of the page is provide you with the lease rates for the various units in the subject property. You can see our start terms are all relatively up to date. 2020 and 2021 for the most part, with one exception. Property does operate on a gross basis, so in order to make a valid comparison, we need to reduce these to effective net rental rates, which we do by deducting the operating costs from the rental rate. So I've done that in the chart at the top, and you can see that our rental rates typically are in that $15 to $17 square foot rental rate range, with a single exception being Unit D, which has a somewhat higher rental rate at $22+ a square foot. Now, Are these rates at market? In order to provide that comparison, we've given you lease comparables at the bottom of page 12. And tried to make these as close in proximity and comparison as possible. So the majority of these properties are located in that southwest quadrant in close proximity to the subject property. So we have starting with 1700 Corridon. This is a good location in the River Heights area. It is a strip mall with an office building on the lot as well. And this is a lease in the office building, 2017 lease at $16 a square foot for a smaller unit size of 1160. Subject property units are between 400 and 1500 square feet. We have 895 Waverly, modern office building, well located on Waverly, relatively recent construction. 2019 lease over a longer term at $16 a square foot. 1150 Waverly, again, modern office building in the same general vicinity as the subject. 2020 lease at $15 per square foot, not $15.95. 104 Scurfield, located across the street from the subject property. 2017 lease at $16 a square foot for 2,600 square feet, 5-year term, etc. And as we go down, I'll point out two properties here. 990 Lorimer. This is a very recently built property, flex warehouse office space. It's on that eastern side of Kenaston. If you know where the IKEA interchange is there, if you head east from there, that is the location of where this Lorimer property is. It's very modern, a lot of office space located in those particular units. So this is an $18 a square foot lease in 2019. So that's getting towards the upper end for 4,000 square feet. And then we have building built in 2005, 1250 Waverly, located at Waverly and McGilvery, this being a medical office building on the corner of McGilvery there, essentially 2020 lease at $19 a square foot. So medical office typically being higher, and this being a nice modern one in a very good location. So is $22 a square foot pretty high? It is, but it's only 400 square feet. So I can understand that would be at market potentially on the outside, pardon me, for the subject property. But basically, the rental rates that the subject is achieving are well supported by the market rents provided. The same market detail is provided on page number 13. Class C suburban ranging between 1308 and 1447, according to the two main commercial brokerages quoted, that being Cushman and Capital. So we believe the subject's in-place market rents are at market. We move on to the expense side. Again, on the vacancy side, we provide the same statistics. We're looking at suburban here, Class C, ranging between 9.4, 17.2, and 5.3% for the Johnson report, with overall suburban vacancy hovering around that 12% range. Again, we have elected to go with a lower vacancy for the subject at 6%. My comments with regard to the expense allowance remain the same. We are, again, asking for the reinstitution of the overall 7% non-recoverable allowance in our valuation to return to the City of Winnipeg's former model. The shortfall allowance, we use $8 per square foot, and we can move on to the cap rate itself. So let's look at my page number 16. I've provided the same capitalization rate charts. The top one is, of course, the main commercial brokerages cap rate ranges that they've published for the relevant time frame. These are, again, for investment grade properties. The subject property would probably fall outside of the Class B range, given its size. And the ranges quoted there are between 6.75% and 7.75%, 6% and 6.75% for Colliers. So an overall range of 6% up to 7.75% is stated by market participants. Our same capitalization rate study is presented at the bottom, with that range of 6.5% up to 8.4% with a high of 10%. Pardon me, the subject property is well located in southwest Winnipeg in that particular quadrant, being located on Scurfield. It is an area of other similar developments, both of an office nature and quasi-industrial nature. It's surrounded by relatively mature, high income residential areas with retail in the area. So it is a quality property. It is certainly in a good location, and it is on the smaller size at under 4,000 square feet in a leasable area. So certainly there would be investors out there that would look at a property such as this. But again, the low end of the cap rate range that we're looking at is certainly at the bottom end, 6%. As shown in the charts on page number 6, with 6.5% being the lowest that we were able to determine in the open marketplace. Looking at the parameters of the subject, we've applied a low cap rate of 6.25% to reflect all of this information, which gives us a final market value of $904,000. And again, income and expense information that we had available to us is included in the addenda, as well as the materials from the brokerages discussed. And when I look at the decision from the last cycle, I guess that wasn't actually included in the brief. I'll leave my presentation at that, and I'm open for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Mr. Spacek, do you have any questions for Mr. Smith?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillick.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread.
None, thank you.
All right, then, Mr. Spacek, please proceed when you're ready.
All right. Thank you very much. We're looking at roll number 03065114700, 103 Scurfield Boulevard. We have a 2023 assessment of $1,097,000. This is a single-story OFS built in 1990 with a gross floor area of 4,388 square feet and a total leasable area of 3,965. Again, Trevor did a great job going over location and everything. I will just skip down to page 3. The subject property was bought in 2018 for $1,230,000. And if you turn to my page 4, we have all of our model parameters for this property, and you'll see we have 3,965 square feet split up over 5 units. You can see they range from square footage size of 1,565 to 800, 400, 400, and 800 square feet respectively. And these rental rates range from 50/70 for the larger space to 1827, 1917, and 1827 across the other spaces. This is an average of $17.44 a square foot across the building. And I also did check if that was to market. I'll go over those comparables shortly, but you'll see our standard OFS parameters for this one. We have a vacancy loss of 6%, expenses of 3%, shortfall at $8 a square foot, and an overall capitalization rate of 5.8%. This is a total 2023 assessment of $1,097,000. If you turn to my page, the next page, page 5, I also looked in the south end for some similar buildings. And again, first comparable on Scurfield, we found a 1-year lease, 2,400 square feet. So this is just right across the street. And it is a lease of $22 a square foot over 2,400 square feet, and the lease was signed in 2020. We have my second comparable is 1601 Buffalo. Again, 9,000 square feet at $22 a square foot. We have a 2-story OFS on Chevrier, which is my third comparable. 5-year lease signed in 2019, 4,500 square feet at $17.46 a square foot. We have 2 OFSs on Waverly. These are 7,280 square feet and 3,150 square feet at $17.50 and $19. And then my last comparable is 59 Scurfield Boulevard. It's a flex warehouse, 2019 lease, 5 years, 5,189 square feet at $18 a square foot. So our overall average of $17.44 a square foot made sense to me, and the comparables justified that. If we turn to page 7, I have the exact same capitalization rate sheet as our last property heard, and you'll see our suburban A and B OFS range from 5.6 to 6.9% for the 2023 cycle, and our subject property is at 5.8%. But again, on the low end, we have a smaller, newer built building that was built in 1990, and again, the capitalization rate makes sense to me. And again, no mailer to go over. We did the non-compliance information. Don't want to go over everything for a second time. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
Yes, just a couple here. Looking at page 5 and the rental comparables there. Your first comparable there, 104 Scurfield. I had a lease from there as well at $16 a square foot. Is it fair to say there's a range of rental rates in that property?
Absolutely.
Okay. 1601 Buffalo Place. That would be the close to the corner of McGilvery and Waverly, correct?
Yes, close to there.
And that would be the building that Remax occupies fully, and it's owned by the ownership of the Remax company. Is that correct?
Owned by Maxer Limited.
Right, which is related to the tenant. So that would be a non-arm's length non-market rent rather. Is that correct?
Sure, you could say that. It's reported as a net lease to us in our mailers every year. Okay. Yes, just indicating that the tenancy and the owner are one and the same in that property. So, pardon me, 1475 Chevrier Boulevard. I actually represent this client, and so in here you have a 2019 lease for 4,584 square feet at 1746 a square foot net. So I printed out their I&E and had a look at it, and there aren't actually any leases at that date for that size at that rental rate. What they do have is a 4584 square foot lease at net rate of 1385 according to their income and expense. Just wondering what the
discrepancy there is. Was that a prior year perhaps, or?
You know what? I would have to look up that. I do check everyone when I put them in, so I would have to look it up again. I have it as 1746, but I will, I'll take your word for it and review that one before I use it again.
Okay, great. And then 1150 Waverly, similarly, I had access to that information, and the leases that I saw from 2020 were 2 leases, different sizes, and they were at $15 a square foot. So you might want to check that one over as well. Sorry, that's not a question. 59 Scurfield, the final one. That property is was owned by Quadrille. Is that correct? A large owner of investment real estate across Canada.
Sure.
Okay. And then just looking at the sizes, so the lease, the square footage of these tenancies ranges between a low of 3150 up to 9580. The subject's leases are considerably different than that. Would that have an impact?
The smaller, yeah, I mean, I would assume like it's showing the smaller units usually tend to rent a little higher than a larger square footage.
Dependent upon the build out and location and desirability of the property, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, those are all of my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Philick. Any questions?
Yes, I do. Can I ask you to go to page 4?
Problem. Let me get the right thing here. Page 4, yes.
So maybe this is a little bit of clarification for me. You show here the premises and the lease area and the rent. You arrive at 69,138.
Yes.
And then down below it shows 71. Why is there a change there?
Yeah, so you can see the difference, and I would have to look up the exact thing, but this is what happens. Like, I didn't catch it, but there was either a change in our parameters that got updated after the kind of the model numbers went out. So the 71, you can attribute the 71,862 to either a square footage like adjustment for the layout, or something was changed within due to like a tenant, say a BA change or something like that for a business assessment, and then that gets carried over to the realty. So really I'm saying it's 1744 a square foot. If you're using the 71, it's actually a little higher. So we are adding, I'm not showing the correct rental rates. There's maybe one of these is a little higher, like that net 1917 is say a 1950 or something, and that's we're using that 71,862 as the potential rent, not the 69,138, if that makes sense.
Well, then there's another question. This is a learning curve for me to ask this question. Okay.
No problem.
According to the appellant's presentation, on page 12, it shows the lease rates and the term of the lease, and it comes to 66,751.
Mm-hmm.
Seem to be the actual numbers that the client is receiving.
Yeah, so that's Mr. Smith.
So why would I not use the actual amount that is being used instead of just a speculation amount?
Well, so when you take a gross rent and you net it out, you could have different opinions on the expenses. It's not exactly an exact a science for working out those net rates.
I'm just talking about the potential rent. We have a rent of 69,138 or 36. So that is the actual rent that the person receives.
Well, yeah, there is, you can get a difference between that 66 depending how you net those gross rents out. It's not exact. We might have a different opinion on what's a normal expense, if they should be stabilized. That's not necessarily exactly what they're getting at, but it's a good approximation of what this building's actually receiving. But we're looking at the fee simple valuation of the property. We're looking at the market valuation, not necessarily exactly what it's making every year. We're looking at what it might be slightly different, but we are very close on that 66,000 to what it's actually getting. I would say 66 to 71 isn't out of like isn't really far off, but I wouldn't necessarily take the exact number what every building's making every year, because you don't necessarily know what's going on with every single lease. If that lease is to market, if that lease was signed close to our reference date, there's lots of reasons to not use the exact numbers that every owner is supplying us. And that's why we have to look at the market.
Wouldn't that be confusing to the owner saying, all of a sudden they assessed that I got rental of this, and meanwhile I have got that?
Well, again, that's what our job is, to look at and to present to you what is the market valuation of the property. And for example, if this building was, had 1 year where all the units were, say something happened and all the leases ran out at the same time and it took them a year to fill it up, that vacancy, we're looking at a market vacancy, not the actual vacancy. There's this could be showing a 70% vacancy 1 year, but we're not going to use a 70% vacancy rate because it's a market vacancy rate. We need to look at over 10 years, what is the vacancy expected for this class type? And we do that for every parameter, because that's how you're going to get those market valuations, as opposed to the lease, the actual valuation based on each lease at each point in time. And that's what we're looking at the border revision. We're looking at the fee simple market value, not the leasehold value of how that property is specifically doing at that moment in time, if that makes sense. And that's why we're presenting comparables to show what the market rent should be, and along those lines. That's what these presentations are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillick. Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
Just one. Jonathan, have I got it right, or am I mistaken when we talk about additional land value with a ratio of 7.9 on a piece of property like this? Usually use a 4.0 ratio, and then anything in addition is additional value. Am I wrong on that?
I mean, it's per property and per area, per property type. Like, it's not just every time it's over a 4.0, we go for excess land. Like, if this property had like a separate road entrance to the back, and maybe there was, other like ways to easily split it off, that might make more sense. But I don't know if this property would be that easy to develop a building at the back, just looking at the top view of it, if that makes sense. So
I'm wondering about that as well.
Yeah, so I'm just again, I mean, on this one we are not asking for any, because it has that extra land at the back. Maybe it's kind of a case by case basis, and it doesn't make sense. Just at a quick look at this one now, it doesn't necessarily make sense for us to add that on this one.
Understood. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. I have no questions either. Does anyone have a need for summary at this time?
I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. Well, we have heard all the items scheduled, and Mr. Lunn, unless there's anything else.
Nope.
Okay, then this hearing is now adjourned. Good morning, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Trevor.
We'll get out of here.